Now, let me ask you guys a question. Are there things that you can think about that you want to do, that you should do, that you know that you need to do, but you just haven't done them yet? Maybe it's a person you need to talk to that you just have been a little fearful of talking to them. Maybe it's a business you wanted to start, but you just haven't done it because you're afraid of what if it doesn't take off. Maybe it's some idea that you've wanted to do, but you just haven't done it. You know, I think this fear, these inhibitions really have the ability to paralyze us. Reminds me of a book I read a number of years ago by a sports psychologist. He had this exercise he would do with athletes. They would come into his office and he had this balance beam on the ground. And he would ask them a question. He'd say, "Can you walk across a balance beam?" And they'd say, "Yeah." And he'd say, "Show me." And they'd get up on that balance beam and they would quickly scurry across that balance beam. And he would say, "Did you just walk across a balance beam?" "Yes." "Do you think you could do it again?" And they'd say, "Yeah." He'd say, "Show me." And they'd walk across it. He'd say, "Could you walk across a balance beam again?" They'd go, "Yeah, I just did it twice. Do it again." And he would make them do it over and over again. And he would always ask them, "Can you walk across a balance beam?" And after the fifth or sixth time, he'd finally say to them, "Can you walk across a balance beam?" And they'd say, "Yes." And he'd say, "Follow me." And he'd take them into another room, and it was a high ceiling room, and there was a balance beam that was 8 feet in the air. And he'd say, "Walk across the balance beam." And invariably, they wouldn't do it. Unless they were like a gymnast or something. They wouldn't walk across the balance beam. And there's no difference. Only one variable was added to the equation. It wasn't merely the height of the balance beam, it was the fear that it evoked. It was the fear of the consequences of failing, the fear of falling off the balance beam. And they wouldn't do it. And he would tell them, "Listen, you just demonstrated to yourself you have the ability to walk across a balance beam. You did it 6 times in a row with no problem. Here's the same balance beam. It's just 8 feet in the air. And yet the only thing that's keeping you from doing it, the only thing that is impeding your progress, that is keeping you from performing with optimal ability, is the fear of the consequence, because that's what you're dwelling on. Not on your ability to do it, but on the consequences if you fail." And I thought, man, what a great example. So many athletes that struggle with their mental game. They play not to lose as opposed to playing to win because they don't want to miss that shot, so they play it safe. It's the same way in life. So many things that we play not to lose, we play it safe. We're afraid of the consequences. We're afraid of the implications of not succeeding. And even though we have all of the ability to walk across that balance beam, here's one that's 8 feet in the air, and yet we avoid it, we delay it, and we just come up with reasons to not do it. I'm confident in all of our lives there's things that we know that we should be doing, we ought to be doing, we need to be doing, and yet we continue to avoid them. We continue to delay them. So let's challenge ourselves to step up and do those things that we know that we're perfectly capable of doing. Whatever those things are for you, you have the ability. You've developed the ability, you have the strength, you've got the skills. Now you just got to make yourself believe it and quit dwelling on the consequences of failure and focus on the abilities that you have to get the job done. If you do that, I promise you, you will live a much bigger life and a much more rewarding life as well.